And good morning, I'm Keith Kountz, and welcome to News 8 Now. We're live on WTNH.com, and I'm joined by Dr. Khalilah Brown-Dean, political science professor at Quinnipiac University, and we're talking about the ongoing public impeachment inquiry going on in Washington right now. Thank you so much for being with me right here. And before we get to the nuts and bolts of what is happening today publicly, let's talk about impeachment in general.
Right.
And the term high crimes and misdemeanors is spelled out in the Constitution. A lot of people don't know what exactly that means, and we're talking about the possible removal of a president duly elected. So what exactly is a high crime misdemeanor?
The founders wanted to be clear. This cannot be your personal gripe with the president. It has to be something that so offends the safety and the security of the American people that it is worth taking on this important process. And so high crimes and misdemeanors are things like treason and bribery. Very specific in the Constitution. It is why we have only had 4 impeachment investigations in the entirety of this great nation.
And we've only had 2 presidents impeached, Andrew Johnson in the 1860s,
right,
and then Bill Clinton in the 1990s,
right,
and neither of them were thrown out of office. And in fact, Clinton came back stronger in that second term, and it didn't hurt him. So impeachment is not necessarily a death sentence for any president.
It's not, and I think what people need to know is that impeachment is bringing formal charges. It is not a conviction. And
Right.
so Congress also wanted to make sure that there's a role for the House, a role for the Senate, and that the American people can influence their representatives.
All right, let's talk about the roles. Over the past couple of weeks, we've seen the closed-door hearings where we've had Bill Taylor and we've had Marie Yanovich and others go talk to lawmakers on both sides of the aisle and present testimony. Is that, if it were a regular trial, is that essentially the grand jury process?
It is the grand jury process that any American civilian would go through, where you go through the evidence, you decide, is there enough substance here to actually pursue it?
Right.
That is not the point where you are able to confront your accusers or to cross-examination. That happens at a trial. And so in this case of a presidential impeachment inquiry, that would not happen until it goes to the Senate if the House votes to move forward.
So what part of the process are we seeing right now with the public hearings? We're on day 2 of them right now.
What we're seeing right now is the decision whether to bring charges. So if the House decides to vote to bring formal articles of impeachment against the U.S. president,
Right.
that vote will take place after these hearings this week and next week. And keep in mind, Keith, it's a very aggressive calendar for Congress. They're talking about wrapping up before the end of the year.
It does seem like they're fast-tracking this, and we're seeing today's public testimony, and then next week, how many days do we have?
So we have 3 days that could change depending on what we hear today and what we could hear next week. So they're saying wrapping up the entirety process, the House and the Senate, in not a lot of time. And I think that Democrats and Republicans have to tread carefully, because in the midst of all of this, we're talking about a shutdown, we're talking about primary elections, and we're talking about holiday breaks where the American people will tune out.
Now, we're seeing the Democrats who are pushing for the impeachment. We're seeing them bring these public figures to go in front of the House lawmakers. Do they run the risk of alienating voters, do you think, in the 2020 election? Either way this impeachment inquiry goes.
There's a long road between now and November 2020. And most Americans are concerned, if I go to work every day, will I have enough money at the end of the month to take care of my family? So they are questioning, what are the political motivations behind this? But also, what does it mean that we're not focusing on other things? Congress can walk and chew gum at the same time. But that sort of political fatigue of the public, we know, and you know in this industry, things change rapidly. We had a school shooting yesterday that received such little coverage because everyone is talking about this investigation.
The one thing that I note during the public hearings, now in addition to the lawmakers on both sides having 5 minutes to question the witnesses, they also have the opportunity to bring in their own attorneys to question these witnesses for a longer period of time. What's the advantage for both sides in being able to bring in private counsel, people who do this for a living to question these witnesses?
Part of the benefit is that you can have someone who is a legal expert, who knows how to investigate, who knows how to question a witness, and maybe get them to be inconsistent and raise the kind of doubt that people are hoping will come forth in this inquiry. The challenge, however, is that we don't vote and elect those attorneys to office. We elect our representatives and our senators. They are beholden to us as the American people. So when you legally cede that duty,
Right.
what does it mean for the veracity of your case?
As you watch these hearings, do you see any likelihood that the Democrats, who largely are pushing for the impeachment of President Trump, are going to change their opinion based on anything we're hearing over these days? Or are the Republicans, who I think largely completely against this impeachment inquiry, are going to change their opinion? Or are both sides so locked in that what we're seeing is for the public, and it's very unlikely that any of the lawmakers are going to change their stance?
Part of this feels performative when you
Yeah, it really does.
Right? People
Yeah.
are trying to get a zinger. Everyone wants to get the soundbite that when the evening news is recapping the day, that will be the member of Congress that they focus
Yeah.
on. It feels performative, but it is also the process that the founders wanted to have. I don't think we're going to hear anything in these public trials that members of Congress have not already heard or read in the private pieces. This is also about the American people. You know, I remember the Clinton impeachment when it was nightly news. Everyone rushed to go hear what had been said. Most people have tuned out. So we have to allow the constitutional process to run its course, but not be naive to think that someone's going to hear some smoking gun admission and go, this is why we should impeach, or this is why we should not.
Now, we're hearing Marie Yovanovitch is testifying today. What are we likely to hear from her? And we also had the two U.S. ambassadors testify 2 days ago.
The big thing that we've already heard from her is the smear campaign that was orchestrated by Mayor Rudy Giuliani. What does it mean when you put an ambassador's life at risk in order to further your agenda? And again, that's about Giuliani.
Right.
It's not about the president. The other thing, Keith, that I think is important that we've heard is that the American people have to pay more attention to foreign policy. What happens overseas will affect our safety and security here at home, whether it's economically or physically, that physical safety. So to have an ambassador who has given their life to upholding American values come into a part of this process,
Right.
it's clear that this is much deeper than, say, some reality show.
Yeah. The scenario that will likely happen from here on out, I would think there's going to be an impeachment in the House because it looks like the Democrats have the votes for that. It looks like the Senate is not going to remove President Trump because it's unlikely that any, certainly not enough Republican senators would change their opinion. Is that the way you see it playing out?
It's definitely the way we see it. But what I think is so important is, again, this reminder to the American public why we need to vote in each and every election. We will decide who sits in the U.S. Congress. Next, in 2020, in the fall, many of those members will be up.
Yeah.
And that's how we determine who's there, who can make these decisions, and it's not just about electing a president.
Okay. You have a new book out.
I do.
That I want to put up right here. And this is Identity Politics in the United States. And it's out. It's doing very well.
It's doing very well. #1 new release on Amazon.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, tell me what this is about. What's your focus?
So we feel like in the U.S. we're so divided. We're always arguing. We're always arguing about race or gender or religion. And that book is about giving us historical context. How did we get here? How did we have debates over people immigrating from Ireland? And how does that mirror the debate we now see about immigration? And the book is not just about how we got here, but more importantly, how we move forward together.
Well, I mean, this country has always been divided
Very.
by race and politics and by wealth. Is there any chance that that could ever change? It just seems like that's part of the fabric of America.
It seems like it is as American as apple pie. What I do hold hope for and what I show in the book are the everyday ways that Americans are engaging that difference. So people who are not U.S. citizens and yet still enlist in the military because they believe in the American dream. And that's where I think we need to hold up those wins and build on them so we can recognize past division but also seek common ground.
I know a lot of people thought that with the election of President Obama, that we were in kind of a post-racial America. You used to hear that term
Right.
all the time. Where do you see that now? Are we in a different place now than we were those years ago?
I think that this year is the 400th anniversary of enslaved Africans being
Right.
brought to this country. So it is naive to assume that Barack Obama could have changed in 4 years what had been cultivated over 200 years in our country. And instead, what I think it also opened up is a question of who is American? Are people viewed the same way, even if they have that legal definition?
What's the answer to that, in your opinion?
Well, the answer to that is that no. We continue to have these divisions, not just around race and gender, but also where we live in this country. We hear a lot in this election about the real America. Well, to me, Connecticut is just as much the real America as Ohio. And we have to affirm that and lift it up. And the other thing I say in the book, Keith, is that we cannot allow politicians to continue hoarding power for a select few when all of us deserve to be a part of that process.
I've got to ask you this. In 2019 going to 2020, is electing the president based on the Electoral College still the way we ought to go, in your opinion? Or should we be going with the popular vote?
I think we need a hybrid. I think that the founders created the Electoral College because they thought the American people were too ignorant
Right.
to make such a decision. Where we are today is not where we were then. And I think that's something that we need to look at, if nothing else, but to restore the public trust and to help people see how they have a role to play, not just in presidential elections, but local elections as well, that can affect their everyday lives.
Because now these candidates are fighting over a few states and a few districts in a few states that are going to decide the presidency.
And if I'm a candidate, what is my incentive to come talk to you here
Exactly, right.
in New Haven if I
Right.
think, oh, it doesn't matter?
Right. If you're a Republican, why are you going to go to California?
Exactly.
If you're a Democrat, why are you going to go to Mississippi?
So I think make the candidates work for each and every vote. Don't allow any political party to take your vote for granted, and demand that accountability. The greatest tool we have in this country is the vote, and we have to protect it and leverage it.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting conversation,
Thank
very
you, Keith.
inspiring. And best of luck with the new book. I'm going to put it up one more time. It's Identity Politics in the United States. Dr. Khalilah Brown-Dean, the author from Quinnipiac University.
Thank you,
Thank
Keith.
you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And thank you for being with us.